Commander Jake Miller stood on the bridge of the UES horizon and watched the strange blue planet grow larger on the main screen. The planet looked like a giant crystal ball, floating in space with bright lights dancing across its surface like colorful ribbons. The lights moved in patterns that seemed almost alive. Jake had been chosen to lead this mission because he was good at talking to people and making friends. Even with those who were very different from him, he was not the smartest person on the ship or the strongest, but he had something special. He could make others trust him. Lisa Wong walked up to Jake and showed him her datapad. "The readings are amazing, Jake," she said. "The entire planet seems to be made of some kind of living crystal. The energy patterns are unlike anything we have ever seen before." Amy Torres was sitting at her communication station, trying to make contact with whoever lived on this world. She had been sending signals for hours, but had not received any response yet. "Commander, I am picking up something," she called out. "It sounds like music, but very different from any human music." Kate Brooks stood near the weapon controls, but her hands were not on them. Jake had told everyone that this was a peaceful mission. They were here to make friends, not enemies. Kate was a soldier, but she understood that sometimes the best way to protect people was to not fight at all. The planet below them was called Zephyria by the beings who lived there. Humans had been watching signals from this world for many years. The signals showed that the people here were very smart and had technology far beyond what humans possessed, but they had never tried to contact Earth's. Jake looked at his crew and felt proud of them. Lisa was the best scientist he had ever worked with. She could figure out how alien technology worked just by looking at it. Amy could learn new languages faster than anyone he knew. Kate was brave and strong, but also knew when not to use force. The ship moved closer to the planet, and they could see cities floating in the air. The buildings were made of the same crystal material as the planet, but they glowed with soft light. The cities moved slowly through clouds of colored energy that looked like the northern lights on Earth. Suddenly, the communication system came alive with sounds Amy had never heard before. The sounds were beautiful, like singing, but also like the wind through trees. Amy worked quickly to understand the patterns. She found that the sounds were actually words in a very complex language. "Commander, they are talking to us," Amy said with excitement. "They want to know why we are here, and if we come in peace. They seem curious about us, but also careful." Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment he had trained for his whole life. First contact with an alien species. Everything he said and did now would affect the future of both human and alien civilizations. "Tell them we come as friends," Jake said to Amy. "We want to learn about them and share knowledge. We bring gifts from Earth and hope to make a peaceful connection between our peoples." Amy translated his words into the alien language and sent the message. The response came back quickly. The aliens wanted the human ship to land in a special area near one of their floating cities. They would send guides to meet them. Jake ordered his crew to prepare for landing. Lisa packed her scientific equipment. Amy gathered examples of human art and music. Kate checked that all weapons were locked away and could not be used by accident. As the horizon descended through the crystal atmosphere, Jake saw beings moving around the landing area. They were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to glow from inside. Their movements were graceful, like dancers. The air around them shimmered with the same energy that flowed through their cities. The ship landed with a soft thud. Jake and his crew put on their environmental suits. Even though Lisa said the air was safe to breathe, they wanted to be careful. During this first meeting, the airlock opened and Jake stepped out first. 3 alien beings approached them. The one in the center was clearly their leader. She was taller than the others, and her skin glowed brighter. Her movements were so smooth she seemed to float rather than walk. Behind her were 2 other aliens who carried objects that might have been tools or weapons. Jake could not tell. The leader raised one long thin hand in what seemed to be a greeting gesture. Jake copied the movement. The leader began to speak in her musical language. Amy listened carefully, and then translated. "She says her name is Queen Seraphina, and she welcomes us to Zephyria. She is curious about our species, and wants to know why we travel so far from our home world." Jake stepped forward and spoke slowly so Amy could translate easily. We are explorers and seekers of knowledge. We have watched your world from far away and admired your civilization. We hope to learn from you and perhaps share some of our own knowledge in return." Queen Seraphina listened to the translation and her skin changed color from blue to purple. Jake wondered if this meant something important. She spoke again, and Amy translated. "She says she has also watched our world. She knows that humans are very different from her people. She wants to understand how we think and feel." The Queen gestured toward the floating city above them. She invited Jake and his crew to visit her palace and learn about Zephyrian culture. Jake accepted the invitation, and the group began walking toward a platform that would lift them up to the city. As they walked, Jake noticed that other Zephyrians were watching them from a distance. Their skin colors kept changing. As they looked at the humans, Jake realized that the color changes must show their emotions or thoughts. Queen Seraphina walked beside Jake and seemed to study him carefully. Through Amy, she asked questions about human leadership and how Jake had been chosen to lead this mission. Jake explained that humans chose their leaders based on their ability to make good decisions and care for others. The Queen seemed surprised by this answer. Her skin shifted to a golden color that Jake found beautiful. She told him that Zephyrian leaders were chosen by a collective mind that connected all members of their species. The individual desires and feelings of a single person were not considered important. Jake found this idea fascinating, but also sad. He wondered what it would be like to never make a choice for yourself, or to never feel truly alone with your own thoughts. As they rose toward the floating city, Jake saw that the Zephyrian world was even more beautiful than he had imagined. Gardens of crystal plants grew everywhere, and the buildings seemed to sing with soft, harmonious sounds. This first meeting was going better than Jake had hoped. The Zephyrians seemed friendly and curious about humans. Queen Seraphina appeared to be intelligent and fair. Jake felt that this could be the beginning of a wonderful friendship between their two species. Little did he know that this meeting would change both civilizations forever, and that his heart was about to discover something more powerful than any technology or weapon. 3 weeks had passed since the humans first arrived on Zephyria. Jake and his crew had been living in guest quarters within Queen Seraphina's Crystal Palace. The building was alive in ways that human architecture could never be. The walls changed color with the time of day, and soft music played from the crystal structures themselves. Every morning Jake would meet with Queen Seraphina in her garden, where plants made of living light grew in perfect geometric patterns. The Queen had assigned herself to be Jake's primary guide and teacher. She seemed genuinely interested in understanding human nature. Lisa Wong spent her days with Zephyrian scientists learning about their energy manipulation technology. The aliens could control the aurora, like forces that powered their civilization, with nothing more than focused thought. Lisa was amazed, but also puzzled. The Zephyrians had achieved technological mastery, but had not invented anything new. In over 1,000 years, Zami Torres worked with Zephyrian linguists and artists. She discovered that while the Zephyrians had complex language and beautiful music, they had no concept of individual artistic expression. All their art was created by groups thinking together. Every song and every sculpture was the product of collective consciousness, rather than personal creativity. Kate Brooks found herself studying Zephyrian society and security. The aliens had no crime, no war, and no conflict of any kind. Every decision was made by the collective mind, and every person knew their exact role in society from birth. Kate admired the peace, but worried about what would happen if the system ever failed. Jake spent most of his time with Queen Seraphina, learning about Zephyrian culture and teaching her about human ways. The Queen was fascinated by concepts that were completely foreign to her people. Individual choice, personal dreams, and the idea that conflict could sometimes lead to growth and positive change. One morning as they walked through the palace gardens, Queen Seraphina asked Jake about human emotions. Her skin had turned a soft silver color, which Jake had learned meant curiosity and deep thought. "Tell me about this thing you call love," she said through the translation device they now used for complex conversations. "I have studied your species records, and this Emotion seems to cause both great joy and terrible pain. Why do humans seek something that can hurt them so much? Jake thought carefully about how to explain love to someone who had never experienced individual feelings. He picked up a crystal flower from the garden and held it gently. "This flower is beautiful," he said, "but if I hold it too tightly, I will break it. If I hold it too loosely, I will drop it. Love is like holding something precious. You must be strong enough to protect it, but gentle enough not to damage it. The risk of pain makes the joy more valuable." Queen Seraphina watched Jake handle the flower, and her skin shifted to gold. Jake was learning that gold meant she was experiencing something new and important. She reached out and touched the flower while Jake was still holding it for a moment. Their hands were very close that evening. Amy Torres made a discovery that would change everything. She had been working with a young Zephyrian named Lyrian, who was fascinated by human music. Amy had been teaching him to play a simple human instrument, and something unexpected happened. Lyrian began to create his own music instead of following the collective patterns. His creations were crude and imperfect by Zephyrian standards, but they were his own. For the first time in Zephyrian history, someone had made individual art. The news spread quickly through the collective consciousness. Many Zephyrians were disturbed by this development. They saw individual expression as a form of chaos that could destroy their perfect society. Others were curious and wanted to understand what Lyrian was experiencing. Jake was called to meet with the Zephyrian Council, a group of the oldest and wisest members of their species. The meeting took place in a vast chamber, where the walls showed images of Zephyrian history, stretching back millions of years. Zelda Vaxtera, the leader of the council, spoke directly to Jake, without using the translation device. Her mental powers allowed her to place thoughts directly into his mind. "Human Jake Miller, your species brings chaos to our ordered world. One of our young people has begun to think and feel as an individual. This has never happened before. We are concerned about the influence your people have on our society." Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Everything he said now could determine the future relationship between humans and Zephyrians. He chose his words very carefully. "Elder Vaxtera, individual thought does not have to mean chaos. Our species has both individual minds and the ability to work together. We create great things through cooperation, but also through the clash of different ideas. Perhaps there is strength in having both unity and diversity there." Council members looked at each other, and their skin colors shifted through various shades. Jake could see they were communicating through their collective consciousness, but he could not understand what they were saying. Finally, Elder Vaxtera spoke again. "We will consider your words, Jake Miller. But know that if your influence proves harmful to our people, the consequences will be severe. We value our peace and perfection above all else." After the meeting, Jake felt worried for the first time since arriving on Zephyria. He realized that the cultural exchange was not just about sharing knowledge, it was about two very different ways of thinking about life itself. That night, Queen Seraphina came to visit Jake in his quarters. She seemed troubled, and her skin kept shifting between different colors. "The council is divided," she told him. "Some want to end the cultural exchange and send your people home. Others believe we can learn from humans without losing ourselves. I am caught between my duty to my people and my curiosity about your ways." Jake looked at the queen and saw something in her that he had not noticed before. Behind her perfect alien beauty there was a loneliness that he recognized. She was the only Zephyrian who seemed to question the collective way of life. "What do you want?" Jake asked her, not as a queen, but as an individual. Seraphina's skin turned deep purple, a color Jake had never seen before. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that surprised him. "I want to understand what it feels like to make a choice that is mine alone. I want to know what humans call personal desires and dreams. The collective consciousness shows me the thoughts of millions, but I have never had a thought that belonged only to me." Jake felt his heart beginning to care for this beautiful alien queen in a way that went beyond diplomacy. He was starting to understand that Queen Seraphina was as curious about individual feeling as he was fascinated by her people. The Cultural exchange was becoming something much more personal and dangerous than anyone had planned. Both species were beginning to change, and no one knew what the consequences would be. In her palace gardens that night, Queen Seraphina stood alone, looking up at the stars, where Jake had come from. For the first time in her long life, she was thinking thoughts that belonged to her alone, and she found the experience both frightening and wonderful. The crisis began on a morning when the crystal cities sang in discord. For the first time in centuries, Jake woke to find Amy Torres in tears outside his quarters. She had been working with Lyrian when something went wrong. He started creating music that expressed sadness and pain. Amy explained to Jake. The collective consciousness felt his emotions, and it spread through hundreds of Zephyrians now. They are all experiencing individual feelings for the first time they don't know how to handle it. Jake rushed to the central plaza, where chaos unlike anything in Zephyrian history was unfolding. Young Zephyrians were standing alone instead of moving in groups. Their skin colors were shifting wildly through shades that had never been seen before. Some were laughing, others were crying, and none of them understood why. Queen Seraphina appeared beside Jake, her own skin a mixture of gold and deep red. Jake had learned that red meant fear or anger. He had never seen her display such strong emotions before. The council is meeting an emergency session, she told him. They blame your people for contaminating our perfect society, Elder. Vaxtera wants to banish all humans immediately and try to restore our collective harmony. Jake watched as Zephyrian parents tried to comfort their children, who were experiencing individual thoughts for the first time. The young aliens seemed confused and frightened by having minds that were separate from everyone else. Lisa Wong approached them with her scientific equipment. The energy patterns are changing, she said. The collective consciousness that binds their society is weakening. Some Zephyrians are beginning to develop individual neural pathways like humans have. Kate Brooks joined the group, and her expression was serious. Commander, I think we need to prepare for evacuation. The Zephyrian security forces are surrounding our ship. They haven't made any hostile moves yet, but they're clearly ready to act if ordered. Jake felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. He had come here to make friends between species, but instead he might have destroyed an entire civilization. The Zephyrians had lived in perfect harmony for millions of years, and human contact had disrupted that. In just a few weeks, Queen Seraphina placed her hand on Jake's arm. Her touch was warm, and he could feel a slight electrical sensation from her alien physiology. There is something I must tell you, she said. Her voice was quiet and filled with emotion. I have been using my connection to the collective consciousness to protect your people. I have been influencing other Zephyrians to see humans in a positive way. This is considered a terrible crime in our society. Jake stared at her in shock. You risked everything to help us. Why would you do that? Because her skin turned the deepest gold he had ever seen. Because I wanted to choose for myself instead of letting the collective decide. I wanted to experience what you call free will, even if it meant breaking our most sacred laws. Before Jake could respond, the air around them began to shimmer with energy. Elder Vaxtara materialized, using Zephyrian transportation technology. Her skin was pure white, which Jake had learned meant fury beyond measure. Queen Seraphina, you have violated the fundamental principles of our civilization, she declared. You have acted as an individual, rather than as part of the collective whole. This is treason against everything we represent. The Queen stood tall and faced Elder Vaxtara. Without fear, I have learned from the humans that there is value in individual choice. I believe our society has become stagnant because we never question or grow. We have achieved perfection, but at the cost of losing our ability to become something better. More council members began appearing around them. Their combined mental power created a pressure that Jake could feel, even with his human mind. The air itself seemed to vibrate with their collective displeasure. Elder Vaxtara turned her attention to Jake. Human, your species has brought corruption to our world. Your chaotic ways have infected our young people with dangerous ideas of individual thought and feeling. You must leave immediately. Jake knew this was the moment that would determine everything. He had to choose between accepting defeat and trying to save the friendship between their species. He thought about Queen Seraphina, who had risked her position to protect humans. He thought about young Lyrian, who had discovered the joy of individual creativity. Elder Vextera, he said, speaking clearly, so all the Zephyrians could understand. Individual thought is not corruption, it is growth. Your people have achieved amazing things through collective consciousness, but they have also lost the ability to adapt and change. The young Zephyrians, who are experiencing individual feelings, are not sick, they are discovering new possibilities. The council members' skin colors shifted as they communicated with each other. Through their mental link, Jake could see that his words had created division among them. Some seemed angry, while others appeared curious. Queen Seraphina stepped forward to stand beside Jake. I request the right to speak as an individual, rather than as part of the collective. This request was unprecedented in Zephyrian history. No leader had ever asked to separate themselves from the collective consciousness, even temporarily. Elder Vextera and the other council members were clearly request is granted, Queen Seraphina, Elder Vextera said, but know that once you separate yourself you may not be able to reconnect. You risk losing your position and your place in our society forever. Queen Seraphina closed her eyes, and Jake watched. As her skin color changed to pure silver, the energy that had always surrounded her began to fade as she disconnected herself from the collective consciousness of her people. When she opened her eyes again, Jake could see that something fundamental had changed. She looked more vulnerable, but also more alive. Her movements were less perfect, but more natural. Choose to experience individual consciousness, she announced to the stunned council. I choose to think my own thoughts and feel my own emotions. I choose to risk imperfection in order to discover what it means to truly live. The council members recoiled as if she had struck them physically. They had never seen one of their own, voluntarily separate from the collective. The concept was so alien to them that they did not know how to respond. Jake felt his heart fill with admiration for Queen Seraphina's courage. She had given up everything she had ever known to defend humanity and to explore new possibilities. He realized that his feelings for her had grown beyond respect or friendship. Elder Vextera spoke with a voice that shook with emotion. You have betrayed your own species, Queen Seraphina. You have chosen chaos over order, individual desire over collective wisdom. This cannot be forgiven. But the Queen stood firm. I have chosen growth over stagnation. I have chosen to risk pain in order to experience joy. I have chosen to become something new, rather than remain something perfect but unchanging around them. The young Zephyrians, who had been experiencing individual thoughts, began to gather. They were drawn to their queen, who had made the same choice they were being forced to make. Their skin colors were bright and varied, like flowers in a garden. Jake realized that this was no longer just about human and Zephyrian relations. This was about the future of an entire species, and whether they would remain forever the same or brave enough to become something greater. The crisis was far from over, but Jake knew that whatever happened next, Queen Seraphina had shown courage that would inspire both species for generations to come. She had chosen to risk everything for the chance to grow, and that choice would change the universe forever. Elder Vextera stood before the assembled council, her white skin pulsing with controlled fury. The division among her people had grown worse with each passing day. Young Zephyrians were choosing individual consciousness, while older members clung to collective harmony. The perfect society was fracturing. We must determine once and for all whether human influence is beneficial or destructive, she announced. I propose that we test these humans to reveal their true nature. If they prove worthy, our species may consider coexistence. If they fail, they must leave and never return. Jake stood with his crew in the great council chamber. Queen Seraphina remained beside him, her skin now permanently silver since disconnecting from the collective. Her presence gave him strength, but he could see the cost of her choice in the way other Zephyrians avoided looking at her. Tests will examine the core of human character, Elder Vextera continued. you claim that individual thought leads to growth. And wisdom, we will create scenarios that reveal whether humans choose cooperation or conflict, wisdom or folly, selflessness or greed. Lisa Wong whispered to Jake, this sounds like they want to prove we're as chaotic and dangerous as they think we are. Kate Brooks kept her hand near her weapon, despite knowing it was useless against Zephyrian technology. If these tests are designed to make us fail, we need to be ready for anything. Amy Torres looked worried. Commander, what if we don't pass their tests? What happens to the young Zephyrians, who have already experienced individual consciousness? Jake felt the weight of responsibility for both species resting on his shoulders. The tests will be fair, he said, with more confidence than he felt. We just need to be ourselves, and show them what humanity really represents. The first test began immediately. The Council used their energy manipulation powers to create a holographic environment that looked exactly like a human colony. Jake and his crew found themselves standing in what appeared to be a perfect reproduction of Earth. Suddenly, the peaceful scene changed hostile. Alien ships appeared in the sky and began attacking the colony. Zephyrian voices spoke from everywhere at once, demanding that the humans choose between saving the colony or escaping with valuable scientific data that could benefit all humanity. Jake watched as his crew instinctively moved to defensive positions. Kate Brooks immediately began organizing evacuation procedures for the colonists. Lisa Wong started calculating ways to preserve the most critical scientific information. Amy Torres began broadcasting warnings to help people find safety. Without hesitation, Jake made his choice. We saved the people first. The data is worthless if we let innocent lives be lost. The holographic scenario ended abruptly. Elder Vaxtera seemed surprised. The first test was designed to see if humans would choose personal survival or collective benefit. Most species saved themselves first. The second test transported them to a scenario where they encountered a primitive alien species that worshipped them as gods. The aliens offered tribute and begged the humans to rule over them. Jake could see that accepting would give humanity incredible power and resources. This is a test of whether we'll exploit those weaker than ourselves. Jake realized he spoke to the holographic aliens. We are not gods. We are travelers like you. We can share knowledge and friendship, but we will not rule over you. Every species must find their own path to growth again. The test ended quickly. The council members exchanged glances, their skin colors shifting as they communicated. Elder Vaxtera announced. The second test revealed whether humans would abuse power over those they considered inferior. You chose equality over dominance. The third test was more subtle. Jake found himself alone in a chamber filled with Zephyrian technology that could solve every problem Earth had ever faced. Poverty, disease, war, and environmental destruction could all be eliminated with this knowledge. But, as Jake reached for the information, a Zephyrian child appeared trapped in an energy storm that was growing more dangerous by the second. The child was one of the young ones who had experienced individual consciousness and was now feared by many of her own people. Jake realized the choice immediately. He could take the technology that would save millions of humans, or risk his life to save one alien child who was already rejected by her own society. The logical choice was obvious. Jake ran toward the energy storm, ignoring the burning sensation as the chaotic forces tore at his body. He reached the child and wrapped his arms around her, protecting her with his own life. The storm raged around them, but Jake held on until Zephyrian rescuers could reach them. When the test ended, Jake was badly injured, but alive. The Zephyrian child was safe. Queen Seraphina rushed to help him, her skin bright gold, with emotion that she was still learning to understand. Elder Vaxtera stared at Jake with something that might have been respect. You chose the life of one alien child over technology that could have saved millions of your own species. This makes no logical sense. Jake struggled to stand with Queen Seraphina's help. It makes perfect sense, he said. Every individual life has value regardless of species. If we saved millions by letting one child die, we would become something less than human. The child matters not because of what she can do for us, but because she exists. The council fell silent. Their skin colors shifted through patterns Jake had never seen before. He realized they were experiencing something unprecedented in their collective consciousness, doubt about their own beliefs. The fourth test came without warning. Jake and his crew found themselves back on the horizon, but the ship was damaged, and supplies were running low. They could make it back to Earth, but only if they abandoned Queen Seraphina and the young Zephyrians, who had chosen individual consciousness. Kate Brooks ran the calculations, Commander. If we take them with us, we might not have enough life support to reach Earth. We're talking about risking the lives of the entire crew. Lisa Wong agreed. The math is clear. We can save ourselves, or we can try to save them, but probably not. Both Ami Torres looked torn. These young Zephyrians trusted us. They chose individual consciousness because of our influence. How can we abandon them? Now Jake looked at Queen Seraphina, who had given up everything to understand what it meant to be an individual. He thought about Lyrian and the other young Zephyrians, who were now outcasts in their own society because they had learned to think for themselves. We modify the ship, he decided. We reduce life support for ourselves and share everything equally. If we don't all make it home together, then the mission was meaningless anyway. But Commander, Kate protested. You could save the human crew for certain. Why risk everyone for aliens we barely know? Because Jake said that is not who we are as a species. We do not abandon friends in need. We do not calculate the value of lives based on species or convenience. Every person on this ship chose to be here, and every person deserves to go home. The test environment dissolved once more. Elder Vaxtera approached Jake slowly, her skin now showing colors he had never seen, combinations of white and gold that seemed to battle each other. Jake Miller, she said, you have shown us something we did not expect. Your species does not choose the logical path, or the path that benefits you most. You choose the path that honors the value of all life, even when it costs you dearly. Jake nodded. That is what we try to do. We do not always succeed, but we keep trying to be better than we were. When Seraphina stepped forward to address the council. I have experienced individual consciousness for days now. I have felt fear, doubt, joy, and hope. These emotions do not make me weaker. They make me more complete. I can still love my people and work for their benefit, but now I also understand the value of personal choice and individual dreams. Elder Vaxtera looked at the queen she had once respected. As perfect, you have changed beyond recognition, Seraphina. You are no longer truly Zephyrian. When Seraphina smiled, an expression she had learned from watching Jake. I am more Zephyrian now than I have ever been. I am choosing to love my people rather than simply existing as part of them. Love requires choice, and choice requires individual consciousness. The council began to deliberate among themselves, their collective consciousness working to process everything they had witnessed. Jake waited, with his crew, and Queen Seraphina, knowing that the future of both species hung in the balance. Whatever the council decided, Jake knew that the tests had revealed something important about both humans and Zephyrians. Neither species was perfect, but both had the capacity for growth, and both deserved the chance to become something greater than they had been before. The great council chamber had been transformed for the final ceremony. Crystal formations that had grown from the living walls created a natural amphitheater where representatives from across Zephyrian society gathered to witness this historic moment. Jake stood in the center, feeling the weight of countless alien eyes upon him. Elder Vaxtera raised her arms, and the assembled crowd fell silent. The collective consciousness had spent 3 days processing the results of the human tests. The deliberation had been unlike anything in Zephyrian history, with individual voices emerging from the collective harmony for the first time in millennia. Jake Miller of the human species, she announced, her skin now showing bands of silver mixed with her traditional white. The council has reached a decision. Your people have proven themselves worthy of alliance and friendship. You have shown that individual consciousness need not lead to chaos, but can instead create new forms of wisdom and compassion. A murmur ran through the crowd as Zephyrians, who had never experienced individual thought, began to understand that change was coming. Queen Seraphina stood beside Jake, her silver skin glowing with emotions she was still learning to name as a gesture of friendship, and to honor your people's demonstrated virtue, Elder. Vaxtera continued, we offer you a choice among 3 gifts that represent the greatest achievements of Zephyrian civilization. The chamber filled with soft light has 3 pedestals. Rose from the crystal floor, each held an object that seemed to pulse with incredible power. Jake could feel the energy radiating from them, even from a distance, Elder. Vaxtera gestured to the first pedestal. The crystal of eternal knowledge contains the complete scientific and philosophical wisdom of our civilization spanning millions of years. With this knowledge, your species could advance beyond anything you have ever imagined. Jake saw Lisa Wong lean forward with excitement in her eyes. The scientific possibilities were beyond calculation. Diseases could be cured, technologies could be developed that would transform human civilization. The second pedestal held what looked like a sphere of pure light. The Harmony Engine, Elder Vaxtera explained, can eliminate conflict from any world. It creates perfect understanding between all thinking beings. War, suffering, and misunderstanding would become impossible on Earth. Kate Brooks nodded thoughtfully. Jake could see her imagining a world without the violence and hatred that had plagued humanity throughout history. Families would never again lose loved ones to senseless conflicts. The third gift was a crown made of crystallized starlight. The crown of worlds would make you a co-ruler of our interstellar empire. You would have access to thousands of worlds and the resources of civilizations beyond counting. Your species would become a galactic power overnight. May Torres whispered to Jake, think about what Earth could become with any of these gifts. We could solve every problem our species has ever faced. Jake looked at each gift and understood their incredible value. The crystal could make humans the smartest species in the galaxy. The Harmony Engine could create perfect peace. The crown could give humanity power beyond imagination. But as he considered these gifts, Jake found his eyes drawn to Queen Seraphina. She stood apart from the other Zephyrians, no longer connected to their collective consciousness. She had given up everything to understand what it meant to choose. As an individual, Jake remembered their conversations in the palace gardens, how she had struggled to understand human emotions, like love and friendship. He thought about her courage in defending humanity before the council, even when it meant betraying everything her people believed. He recalled the moment when she had voluntarily disconnected from the collective consciousness, risking her sanity and her position to experience individual thought. She had made the ultimate sacrifice to bridge the gap between their species. Around him, Jake could hear the whispered expectations of both humans and Zephyrians. Everyone assumed he would choose the Crystal of Knowledge or the Harmony Engine, gifts that could transform humanity and solve the greatest challenges facing Earth. Lisa Wong caught his eye and nodded toward the Crystal Commander. She whispered, this could revolutionize human science. We could cure every disease, eliminate poverty, explore the stars. Kate Brooks gestured toward the Harmony Engine. The conflicts that have torn our world apart could finally end. No more wars, no more hatred, just peace and understanding. Amy Torres looked at the Crown of Worlds. We could become a spacefaring civilization overnight. Think of the opportunities for our people. Jake understood why his crew wanted him to choose one of these incredible gifts. Each one represented solutions to problems that had plagued humanity for centuries. Any logical person would see the choice as obvious, but Jake had learned something important during his time on Zephyria. The greatest treasures were not objects or power or even knowledge. The greatest treasures were the connections between thinking beings, the courage to choose love over logic, and the willingness to risk everything for someone else. He looked at Queen Seraphina, who had taught him that true strength came from choosing to care about others, even when it cost you everything. Her skin was shifting through colors of gold and deep blue emotions that Jake now recognized as hope mixed with uncertainty. Stepped forward and faced Elder Vaxtera. The gifts you offer are incredible, and any of them would benefit humanity greatly. But I have learned something from Queen Seraphina and your people about the true nature of choice. The chamber fell completely silent. Every Zephyrian, every human, waited to hear which gift Jake would claim for his species, looking directly at Queen Seraphina. Jake smiled the same smile that had first intrigued her weeks ago when they met in the palace gardens. "You," he said, simply. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Elder Vaxtera's skin flashed pure white with shock. The other council members began shifting through colors so rapidly, they looked like living rainbows. The assembled Zephyrians created a sound like singing mixed with the wind that Jake realized was their expression of complete amazement. No being in the history of our civilization has ever chosen a person over power or knowledge, Elder Vaxtera said, her voice filled with something that might have been awe. You reject gifts that could transform your entire species to choose one individual. Jake nodded yes, because I have learned that the connections between people are more valuable than any technology or power. Queen Seraphina taught me that love requires choosing someone, even when logic says you should choose something else. Queen Seraphina stepped forward, her skin now glowing brighter than Jake had ever seen. The colors were pure gold mixed with silver, creating patterns that seemed to dance with joy. Elder Vaxtera, she said, addressing her former colleague Jake, has shown us what we lost when we chose perfection. Overgrowth. What we gained in harmony we lost in the ability to truly care for each other as individuals. The Queen turned to face the assembled crowd. I choose to abdicate my throne to explore the galaxy with Jake, not because I reject my people, but because I want to learn what it means to love someone freely. I want to experience the universe through individual consciousness. Elder Vaxtera stared at both of them. This is unprecedented. A human choosing a person over power, a queen choosing love over duty. What will become of the alliance between our species? Queen Seraphina's sister Liana stepped forward from the crowd. Her skin showed the new mixed colors of someone experiencing individual thought while remaining connected to the collective. I will take the crown, she announced. I have learned from both humans and from my sister that true leadership requires both collective wisdom and individual compassion. Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The alliance would continue, but now it would be based on mutual respect and understanding, rather than just diplomatic necessity. Elder Vaxtera approached Jake and Queen Seraphina, her skin now showing colors Jake had never seen before. Jake Miller, your choice has taught us something we did not know was possible. You have shown us that sometimes the greatest gifts are not things we can hold, but people we choose to love. She turned to address the entire assembly. Let this day mark a new chapter for both our species. We will learn from each other, not by becoming the same, but by celebrating what makes us different. Humans will teach us about individual choice and personal growth. We will teach them about collective harmony and shared wisdom. As the ceremony concluded, Jake and Queen Seraphina walked together toward the landing platform where the horizon waited. The ship had been modified with Zephyrian technology, allowing it to travel between stars and explore the galaxy. Queen Seraphina had given up her crown, but gained something more precious, the freedom to choose her own destiny. Jake had rejected gifts that could have transformed humanity, but gained a partnership that would enrich both species. 4 generations. Zaimi Torres joined them as they boarded the ship. Commander, she said, I think you made the right choice. The greatest discoveries come from understanding each other, not from having all the answers. Lisa Wong nodded. The technology and knowledge will come naturally through friendship and cooperation. What you chose is worth more than any gift they could have given us. Gate Brooks, smiled Jake. You chose the most powerful thing in the universe. Someone willing to risk everything to stand beside you. As the horizon lifted off from Zephyria, Jake stood on the bridge with Queen Seraphina, watching her homeworld grow smaller. Below them, the crystal cities sang with new harmonies, as young Zeph learned to balance individual thought with collective wisdom. Queen Seraphina placed her hand in Jake's, their fingers intertwining. I never understood what humans meant by hope, she said. Now I know. It means believing that the future can be better than the past, even when you cannot see how. Jake smiled. You taught me something. To love is not about finding someone perfect, Love is about choosing someone brave enough to grow with you together. They looked out at the stars, knowing that their choice had changed both species forever. The universe was vast enough for logic and emotion, order and chaos, individual dreams, and collective wisdom, most importantly. Jake had learned that sometimes the greatest gift was not something you could take, but someone you chose to give your heart to, and Queen Seraphina had discovered that true love required the courage to choose freely, even when that choice meant leaving everything familiar behind. Their journey together was just beginning, but they faced the future knowing that they had found something more valuable than any treasure, the courage to choose each other.